We're on Chav Gimel Midbeis the Mishnah. Misha Kidesh Achas Mishtei Achios V'Einu Yodea Ezem and Kidesh. So each one of these two sisters is a Safek Mikudeshes. He's not allowed to have a relationship with either of them. Is no saying get lazu, forget lazu. Each one is a Safek whether he's allowed to have relations with her. Maybe it's achos ishto, and therefore he has to give a get to both of them. Mace. Now the Makadish dies. V'lo echad, he has one brother, so the two sisters fall for Yibum, misafek. Each one is the safek. Is choletz l'shteya. We cannot possibly allow Yibum in this case to either one of the two women, two sisters, because it's possible that she's not married to your brother at all, because she's achos ishta. But we can allow for chalitza because there's no loss, it's only win-win if he gives a chalitza. Hayulo shnayim. Now we're talking about a man who marries one of two sisters and he leaves two surviving brothers. Is echad choletz v'echad miyabim. Here we can apply the logic of mimanafshat. So one of the two surviving brothers will give chalitza to one of the two sisters, and therefore, if that sister was really married to his late brother, then he's being mafkia the zikas yibum with that chalitza. And now the second brother could marry the other sister, the Oz echad miyabim, and there's no chash of achos ishto because he already removed the zika. So whatever achos ishto could have possibly been is that was removed by virtue of chalitza. Now I'm wondering if there was a bracha on the mitzvah of yibum, would he be able to make the bracha on the mitzvah of yibum? Because his brother only married one of these two sisters, a 50% chance that this is the one that he married, but 50% chance that it's not the one he married. Now, let's say this didn't happen the way it was supposed to happen, where one brother, one Yavam, or Safek Yavam, gave her chalitza to one of the two sisters, and the other Yavam was miyabim, the other sister, but rather kadmu v'kantu, each one married a different sister, which is a dangerous business. She might be achos kukascha. And here the Mishnah says, ein motziin miyadam. We're not going to force them, each one, to divorce his wife. Each one could say, this woman that I married is really the wife of my brother, and I'm being miyabim haminadin. And even though it's possible that it's his brother who is miyabim, the one who is achos ishto, and he's marrying now achos kukaso, and that's an isur. Nevertheless, now, after the other brother also married the other sister, he's miyabim the shnia, so paka mimeno zikas harishon. Any zika that she, the second sister, had to the rishon is completely gone as a result of the yibum of the other brother, and therefore the eshes harishon is not considered achos kukaso, and he's allowed to keep her and maintain the marriage relationship. The Mishnah has another din now. Shnayim, two men who are not brothers. Shekinshu shtei achos, they married Rachel and Leah. Ze eni yodea ikidesh ze, v'zeni yodea ezo kidesh. Neither one knows which of the two ladies was married to him. Like, for example, let's say it was through a shliach. Is Zeno saying shnei gitin? V'zeno saying shnei gitin. Each one of the brothers has to give 2 gitin because we don't know which one of the two he married. Well, I may have said each one of the brothers. They're not brothers. Okay, each one of the Makachim, I should say. So if each one gives 2 gitin to each one of the 2 ladies, then we've covered all our bases. Mesu. Now these 2 men who married 2 sisters died, and we don't know who was married to who. Is lazeh ach v'lazeh ach. If each one of these 2 men left a surviving brother, zechol it's l'shtein v'zechol it's l'shtein. This is exactly what we saw before, that the ach of the Mekadesh, the suffix of shtei achios, has to give chalitza to both of them, because he doesn't, right? He doesn't have the possibility of yibum for either one of them because it might be achos kukasa. So he's left with chalitza, and he gives chalitza to, there'll be chalitza to both. Now the Mishnah gives another scenario. Lazeh echad v'lazeh shnayim. One of the Makachim has 1 brother. The other Makadesh has 2 brothers. Hayachid, in other words, one Makadesh has only 1 brother, is choletz l'shtein. He'll give chalitza to both of them, to both Rachel and Leah. This again is what we saw earlier in the case where he's Makadesh achas mishtei achios, and he only has 1 brother, so he has to give chalitza. Vashnayim. So until now we were talking about the Yachid, right? There was only 1 Makadesh. But Hashnayim, if there are 2 brothers of the second Makadesh, is Echad Choletz v'Echad Miyabim. Again, what we saw before in the case where he's Makadesh 1 and 2 sisters, and there are 2 brothers. If these 2 brothers went ahead and they were kones, so let's say Kadmu v'kansu shnei achim shalom hakadosh hasheni eshtei achios, they shouldn't have done, is ein motziim biyad. As we saw before in the Reisha, we're not going to break up the marriage. The Mishnah continues. Lazeh shnayim, 1 Makadesh has 2 brothers. Lazeh shnayim, another Makadesh has 2 brothers. Achiv shel zeh, one of the brothers of the Makadesh, choletz li achas, the achiv shel zeh choletz li achas. So the other Makadesh, the other brother, will give chalitza to the other sister. Achiv shel zeh, right? 1 Makadesh. And we're talking about the ach that did not do chalitza. Is miyabim chalutzaso shel zeh. After his brother gives chalitza to the other one, he could marry her. That same sister that the ach of the Makadesh Hasheni, gave a chalitza. And we would say the following. If this is the sister who was married to his late brother, then he's being miyabim ha kidin. If she's not the wife of his late brother, but rather she's the wife of the second Mekadesh, well, Kvarpoka Zikasa, once one of the Achim gave a Chalitza, there's no longer a Zika. Now, V'chena din be'achos hashniya. Ochiv hasheni shel zeh shel Mekadesh hasheni. Dainu oso ha'ach shelo chalatz. Miyavim chalutzaso shel zeh. He could be miyavim that sister that the ach of the Mekadesh Harishon gave chalitza. Kodmu shnayim. So we're talking now about two brothers of one of the Mekadesh. Vecholzu. So these two brothers gave chalitza to the two sisters. Lo yiyavmu hashnayim. The achim of the other Mekadesh is not allowed to be miyavim. Why? What's the problem here? The chashash is that maybe the Rishon was miyavim, the sister of the Shniya, who was not Eishes Achim. And therefore now she becomes Asur Lav Mishum Achos Kukasa. Achosa Skuka Loli Yiva. Her sister requires Yiva. So she's Achos Kukasa. Ela Echad Choletz, one should give Chalitza to one of the sisters. And if she is, in truth, we don't know, the Eishes Achia Mes, then with that Chalitza is Mafkia Zika Sayibum, and now she's not, now her sister is not Achos Kukasa. The Echad Miyabem, and one of the two brothers is Miyabem, and there's no chashash. Why? Because if it's Eishes Achames, that he's Miyabem, and even if you'll say she's not the Eishes Achel Achosa, nevertheless, since the other brother gave chalitza, he was mafkia lezikas achosa, so there's no erev of achos kukasa. Kadmu v'kansu ein motziyim miyot. So that's the Mishnah. And now we get to the Gemara. So again, the Mishnah, in a case where he was makadosh one of two sisters, he has to give a get to both of them, because one of them is a valid kedusha. Shmami no kiddushin she'ena mesurim lebia havi kiddushin. This is Abai against Rava, famous Yal Kigam, one of the 6 cases where we accept Abai against Rava, and that's kiddushin she'ena mesurim lebia. In other words, in this case, he cannot have a relationship with any of these two sisters, and he's makadosh one of them because it might be achos ishto. And yet, we require in our Mishnah get, obviously the Kiddushin is valid. So Gemara says no. There's no proof for Abaye here. So at some point in time, we knew it was clear who he was Mekadesh. But later on, the sisters got mixed up, and we no longer, they're maybe identical twins, for example, and we have a suffix, who is the wife, who is the woman that he was Mekadesh. So we cannot prove Abai's din from here, because in this scenario, at one point in time, the Kedushin were Kedushin HaMesurim L'Bia. Now we have a mistake, we have a mix-up situation. But we need to get, because the Kedushin are valid, because at that moment in time when he was Mekadesh, they were Mesurim L'Bia. At that time we knew exactly who his wife was. And Dekanami, we could be medayik thusly in a Mishnah that we're talking about hukru l'sof nis'arvu. The Katani, it says in the Mishnah, Misha Kiddush Achas, the Eino Yodea Ezem and Kiddush, Lokani, the Eino Yodua. It says Eino Yodea, meaning now he doesn't know. If they never knew it, then it would have been Eino Yodua. Shma Mina, and that's a good proof. So Gemara now asks, if we cannot prove Kiddushin HaMesurim, She'enim Mesurim L'Bia from this Mishnah, is my Kamashmalan. So when the Mishnah says no saying get Lazev, get Lazuv, get Lazu, what's the Chiddush? I mean, that's Pasha, Pshita, Vada. Can you argue with that? If he has a suffix, which one is the Isha that he was Makadesh, and he has to give each one of them a get. Each one is in the suffix. So the Gemara answers, Seifa Itzrichle. You're right. The Reish has no Chiddush, but there's a Seifa has a Chiddush. What does it say in the Seifa? Meis v'lo ach echad. Right? He died after marrying one of two sisters, and he left a surviving brother, one single brother. Choletz l'shtein. The brother, like the original brother, the late brother who gave a get to both of them, now this brother, the Yavam, has to give chalitza to both. Hayu lo shnayim. Echad choletz v'echad miyabed. So he has two brothers. Not the case where he left one brother who gives chalitza to both of them. He has two brothers, and one is chalitza, one is miyamet. But what's the chiddush now? Dafka michlitz v'hadar yibume. Why does it say echad chalitz first? Because the chalitza has to come first from the achar rishon for one of these two sisters, and then the acharkach, the hada yibume, the second brother could be miyavin the second sister. And why? Because the chalitza took place first. But if it was the exact opposite, yibume beresha, and the first brother was miyavin one of the two sisters before the chalitza of his brother to the second sister, lo, that we cannot accept. Why not? Because we have a chashash to kapaga b'achos kukaso. Like we explained in the Mishnah, there's a chashash. Maybe the one that he's being miyabed is not really Eishes Achiv, but rather Achosa, and now he's marrying the Achos Ishas Kukalo. That's called Achos Zukukaso. And he's taking off the Yibum and violating the Isra of Achos Zukukaso. The Mishnah says, Shnayim Shekidshu Shtei Achos. Mamina Kiddushin She'eno Mesurim L'Bi'avi Kiddushin. Should we again, as we tried in the Reisha, attempt to use this Mishnah as a proof to Abaye that Kiddushin She'ena Mesurim L'Bia, no, and this would be a proof to Rava, excuse me. No, just 1 second, I'm sorry. No, to Abaye, right? To Abaye that Kiddushin She'ena Mesurim L'Bia Havi Kiddushin. And for the fact that she'll need a get from this one and a get from that one, it means that there is a chalos kedushin, even though it's a suffix. And the Gemara answers the same answer that we had above. Hachinami will give you the same answer in the sefer that we gave in the Reisha. Shehukru ulavas sofnis arvu. So at the time of the kedushin, we knew which of these two sisters he was makadesh, and then they got mixed up, and then the suffix emerged. So since B'Shas Kiddushin, the Kiddushin were Mesurim L'Bia, because at that point we knew exactly who he was Mekadesh, is therefore everybody would agree that even though later on it becomes Eino Misurim Labia, but the Kedusha were already Chal. Daikanami the Ketani Vediotea V'lo Ketani Eini Yodua Shma Minu. Gemara asks Sumai Kamachmalon. If you cannot prove from this the din of Kedushin Sheina Misurim Labia, so what was the Mishnah coming to Mechadish? I mean, it's Polshut that if this Mekudeshes is in a suffix situation, she desperately needs a get to resolve that suffix. And the more answers, you're right. There's no Chiddush in this din. But Seifa, it's true. We need this din as an introduction, setting up the background for the Seifa. And in the Seifa, there's going to be a big Chiddush. And what is in the Seifa that needs a Chiddush? Mesu, if these two men that married two women, and we don't know which one each one married, is Zeh Echad V'Zeh Shnayim. Let's say when these two brothers married these two women, so again, there were two men that married two sisters. Lazeh echad lazeh shnayim. And each one of these two men had a brother. One of them had one brother, the other had two brothers. Hayochid choletz l'shtein. The ach hayochid, meaning that there's only one brother, he should give chalitza to shtein. Vashnayim, echad choletz v'echad miyabim esashnim. So now the Gemara is saying that, wait a second, you're really repeating exactly what we know in the Rachel. Because if lazeh echad lazeh shnayim, then certainly the Yachid has to give two chalitzos. But as far as the Shniya, as far as the other brothers concerned, two brothers, right? There are two brothers, a set of two brothers, surviving brothers. Then one is chalitz, one is miyabi. The Gemara says pshitainu reisha. This din is already written in the reisha. And he has two brothers. One is chalitz, one is miyabi. So now what you did is you added another mekadesh, right? There's one ach that we know about, and then we have the second ach, and now we have the third ach. So the Gemara says pshita hainu reisha, and for the Gemara, no. If not for the din that was written here in the Seifa, we would have thought that if there's another Mekadesh and he leaves one brother, and therefore the din is that he gives chalitza to both wives, ligzar trey otu chad. Again, mal d'tem means in the Havamin, if not for the Mishnah, and the Sefer of the Mishnah specifically, we would have made a gzera. And we're going to say that there's an Iser even on two Achim of the Mekadesh Hasheni for Yibum. And he doesn't have an option, neither of the two brothers has an option of Yibum. Why? Because we should make a gzera that this din should, of one being chalitz, one being miyabim, should only apply. Instead of that din, there should be shneim choltz. Why? Because we're going to have a gzera to chad. Because if there was only one brother to the other makadesh, then we have to be choshesh that if, with regard to the two achim, the din would be echad cholitz v'echad miyabim, then they're going to come, even in the case where there's one single ach of the Mekadesh, and he'll come to be miyabim one of these two sisters. And now he's going to violate, or he might violate, achos kukasa. His Kamashmal in the Tana says, no, we don't make that gzera. And even in this case, the din of Shnei Achim is going to be that one is choletz and one is miyab. And now the Tana tells me another din, the dafka michlitz v'hadar yibume. The sequence is crucial. The chalitz has to take place first, and afterwards the yibum, but yibum b'reisha to start with yibum low. That's not permissible. The kapaga Yevamot lashuk. We have to be choshesh that maybe this woman that he's being miyabim is not the wife of his late brother, but rather the wife of the second Mekadesh. Right? There are two brothers, two Mekadeshim. So therefore, she's asura b'itzi Yevamot lashuk. It's only after chalitzas ha'ach shalos Mekadesh, then he's mafkir the zika, and she's no longer Yevamot lashuk. Now the Mishnah says lo zeh shnayim v'lo zeh shnayim. The din is that one of the brothers of one of the Mekadshim is choletz, one of the sisters, and the other ach of the second Mekadesh is cholet the shniya. And then miyabim shnei achim anosarim. If there are two other brothers, they can be miyabim. In other words, the one brother, the Mekadesh, ach echad shel Mekadesh, the ach echad shel Mekadesh hasheni, kol echad es osa choshelo cholatz loachiv. Right, he could be miyabim, the sister that did not receive from his brother chalitza, ela ach shel Mekadesh ha'ach. So in other words, the din is that within every one of them, of these two groups of brothers, one is going to be choletz and one is going to be miyabim. So once again, the Gemara asks hasu lamali. Why do we need this din? Hainu hach. That's identical to the din of the Reisha. The Gemara answers, Ma'odetema, I would have said, if we didn't have this din, that we're not going to be mata yibum. In this case of shnayim, ligs are dilma miyabim below chalitza. Maybe each one of the brothers is going to be miyabim without chalitza, and they'll completely forget about the fact that there are two other brothers that need to be choletz these two sisters. V'zos mishum sheba ofen shel shnayim v'sofo shel davar misyabmot shtei achios lachein alulim litos v'lomim shemiachim shtei misyabnos ein kvar tzorich lechalitza. The Mishnah has to tell me that we're going to allow this, and it's not similar to the Reisha, because in the Reisha, when one had one brother and the other had two brothers, then only one of these two ladies are misyabmos, and the other one gets chalitza. So if already they're involved in chalitza achas, and there's no yibum, they'll remember that even the shniya, who is misyabemes, requires chalitza as well. Mashmalan, that we don't have that gzeira. Okay, then here's where we're going to stop. Let's make a note. We still have a little bit left on the Amud, but I think that we can leave for tomorrow. Is Maishna. Okay, then. Okay, have a great day.